Uncanny.
Hello, and welcome to the Peaceful Empowerment Work Show. We are live on the new streamingnetwork.com, home of Going Bold Media.com, Going Solo Media.com, and WGSN-DB Going Solo Network. We are the Peaceful Empowerment Work Show, and I am your co-host, Judy Forder, and I am here with my co-host in peace, Miss
Kris Burke. Hi, everybody.
Hey, everybody. Before we get started, if you enjoy our content and would like to help us get it out there to the world, please like, share, comment, and subscribe. Today, we are live with our part 4 episode of our 6-part series, Living with and Through Addiction. Sorry about that, folks. And in part 1, we discussed why we need it until we don't. And then in part 2, we talked about embracing the parts of you that thought escape were the only reason. What's the only answer? And part 3, finding the keys to control. So now here we are. We have found our keys to control, and it's time to do some house cleaning. So how do we make room for something new?
Yeah, and it was funny when you said living with addiction. I thought, well, we're only on part 4, so really we're still living with it. That's totally accurate. Yeah. How do we make room for it? And I think we just answered that question, right? How do we make room for something new? We ask the question. How do we make room for it? There's an intention in that, right? I would like something in my life besides me automatically, unconsciously responding to my automatic patterns that I recognize are not creating a great experience for me and may in fact be self-destructive. I know my addictions were super self-destructive, right? That doesn't mean everybody's are, right? I can't know that, but we can each know for ourselves, was I creating a life that was generally going in a, more and more positive and enriching and fulfilling direction? Or was I creating a life that was more of the same hard, crappy stuff? And for me, I was accumulating a lot of things that didn't feel very good.
Yeah. I think a very important part you made when we were preparing for the show is one of the biggest things we need to realize is when we're living in that world of addiction, these are the things that we have attracted to support the addiction.
Mm-hmm.
The friends, the environments, the activities that we do all support and align with the addiction.
Mm-hmm.
So when we're making room for something new, we have to be honest, brutally honest with ourselves, and really have a certain level of self-awareness. Because Kris and I were talking about, that person that's going to give up drinking but still go out clubbing with their friends.
Right.
That person that's going to give up drinking but still sit at the bar with their buddies.
Right.
And I keep laughing because there seems to be a strong focus on alcohol specific today. I don't know what that is, but we're going to roll with it. When you put yourself in that situation and tell yourself, I should be strong enough. I'm strong enough. I can handle this. I can sit at a bar and drink water and soda.
Hold on.
While everybody else is, repeating the same pattern that they have. And to me, that's a form of self-abuse. That's a form of self-sabotage. Putting yourself in the same environments that support your addiction is not supporting your growth and your desire for change.
Yeah, absolutely true. I used to avoid doing things at night. I had all kinds of excuses for why I wouldn't do things at night, but generally it was because, no, that's my drinking time. Right? You want to take a class, you want to go to a show, you want to, there are a lot of things you could do. I lived in, Michael and I were in Manhattan for 6 years. So there were a lot of things available to us within a, short distance, but most of the time we opted for, let's have a couple of glasses of wine and something to eat. So it was that same routine all the time. And it wasn't very often that there was something that I wanted to do that was enough for me to say, no, I'll forgo that. Why? Because I had an addiction.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. And it's interesting how different things are. And again, Kris and I can only talk to you from our experiences. And she was sharing how, she would walk into a room full of people and feel judged. She would feel scanned and she would feel their judgment. And that's why she would want to take a drink or two or three or
Hmm.
four,
Hmm.
whereas I would walk into a room and I was doing the one that was judging myself versus everybody else in the room. So I would take a drink to shut myself down.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting. I don't know if people know this or not, but when you walk into a room, people literally give you a scan from top to bottom. They'll do the top to bottom to, halfway up again thing. Do they think you can't see their eyes moving? It's a strange thing to me. Like I don't do that because I'm so aware that people do it. Like I make eye contact with people and I deliberately keep my eyes on them. I remember being a waitress and being, kind of bigger chested at that time and, walking up to a table and I'd think, no, eyes are up here, people. Like we notice we're picking up these subtle cues and not so subtle cues all the time. And when people are visibly scanning us, like openly, visibly, just feeling like, sure, I can scan you and make my snap judgment, it's my right to do that. And there's nothing wrong with doing that. When you're aware of it, makes you feel really vulnerable.
Yeah, very much so. It's whatever the addiction is, um, it's been acquired for one reason or another, but for survival. It's how we have learned to cope.
Mhm.
So when we get to this stage now of making room for something new, it's really taking an inventory of the patterns in your life.
Mhm.
What patterns do you want to support? And what patterns are you ready to shift and change?
Yeah.
So when you can sit down and be brutally honest with yourself, what am I doing that serves me to the highest of intentions, and what is it that drains me?
Yeah.
What fills me up versus what drains me, and really look at what how you spend your time.
Yeah, and how it feels. I know we were saying before the show, like I started looking for things to fill my life up with because I'm just the way my mind and my experience works is that I can't let go of things and just have a void. Like I can't have a life that has like certain number of pieces in it and then just pull one piece out and be like, well, I'm missing a piece. I can't do it. However, it's always worked really well for me to get some more pieces, like to put some things in my life that I can put my attention into. For example, when I quit smoking, I ran a half marathon, right? So I was like, I know, I'll start training for a half marathon. I'll put my energy over here. And let's face it, when you get back from running, nobody wants to sit down and, you know, puff on a cigarette. Not that I didn't do it a time or two. I'll, be honest about that. Um, but it just always worked to find those things where I could put my attention and energy that were more helpful, where there was more well-being. So I took an art class, I did a shaman apprenticeship, and ultimately I got horses. Right. And I think it was that, like, I kept searching. And while I was doing the shaman class and while I was doing the art class, I was continuing to drink. Right.
That's
It did.
that's important for people to hear.
It's really important. Like I was in the process of searching. I knew I wanted something different, and I had this idea. I had this sort of mythical unicorn idea that somewhere out there was a group of people who were healthy, who like hung out together and they were healthy. And if I could go find them, I could hang out with them. And then I could copy what they were doing. And then I would be healthy too. Right. I could learn to fit in with the healthy people. So I had this idea and I went out searching for them. And what I found is that they don't all hang out in one place and they sure as hell don't wear labels that say, hey, I'm a healthy person.
And if they do, take pause.
Yes, that's right. The people that come up and tell you how healthy they are, eh, how they've got it all figured out, that might be a
Pause.
red flag. Yeah, yeah. It's interesting, right? Because I thought, and innocent enough, because I knew that those of us with the addictions who were, struggling and always had problems to complain about, and there was a lot of drama, and, I knew that group was hanging out together. And I knew that as long as I hung out with that group, I didn't have a snowball's chance in hell of changing my behavior.
Mhm. Yeah. So in I come with energy talk. Yes, because there's a certain vibration that we carry
Uh-huh.
when we participate in behaviors that are detrimental to us, no matter what the addiction is. If it's, again, if it's not filling us up, if it's not lighting us up, bringing us joy, allowing us to feel love, um, allowing us to experience happiness, if it's, it's it's that cock block, that cock block of the universe that isn't allowing us to um, experience all of the emotions,
Right,
then it's an addiction.
right.
And when we solidify ourselves in that vibration, again, everything that comes to us is supporting that addiction. So when we make the decision that we're going to do something different, I mean, it's so important that Kris said she started trying different things, but she was still drinking.
Mhm.
Because we laughed and we're like, yeah, you got to try different things. Well, here's the person that, has to drink to take the edge off in social situations, but I'm going to put myself in a whole new group with a whole new bunch of people and I'm not supposed to drink.
Yeah, yeah,
So it's really important that you shared that with everybody.
yeah.
So, try new things, get yourself into different environments. You
Mm.
know, we feel energy, whether we want to admit it, acknowledge it or not. When you walk into a room, if you're like, something
Yeah,
doesn't feel right in here, or that dude's creepy, you're
mhm,
feeling energy,
yeah,
you know?
yeah. And it's funny, like, I met some people who were delightful. I mean, absolutely delightful. I also met, other people. I met the whole range of people. But I met some people who it was shocking to me how lovely they were. Meaning, the people I hung out with were sarcastic. Um, you know, uh, if they didn't like your shoes, oh, I can't believe you got those. It was like they would look for things that were wrong with you, and then they would point them out, and that was considered to be perfectly okay behavior,
Hmm.
right? So when I met people who were like, God, you have such nice, energy about you. Or I love the way you shared this. And I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop because the people that I hung out with didn't give genuine, heartfelt compliments away like candy. It was like, okay, what do you want? Right?
Hmm.
There was always a catch to that behavior with the people I hung out with, including myself. I mean, this is how I behaved, that our thoughts, the way we thought, the way we felt, and the way we behaved lined up. And I think we took turns being the perpetrator and the victim.
Hmm.
We would switch positions, and probably all the time we all thought we were the victim, even when we weren't, right? But that behavior was normal to me. That's what I thought people behaved like. So when I went and met some lovely people who were just like, they were just lovely, I was like, wait a minute.
You're
Right?
like,
Yes. I didn't trust it. I'm wondering what's with her,
hmm
or what's with him because I've never had a guy be genuinely nice to me who wasn't hitting on me.
hmm
That was some, years ago, but that was in like if a guy was nice, it was like, "Oh, watch out for him." Right?
know what he wants.
Yeah, you know what he wants. And then I met some men who were, lovely men who were just kind and respectful. And it kind of blew my hair back.
Well, one of the biggest things with addiction is we've said it, you lose connection with yourself. So you don't trust your intuition. You don't trust what your body tells you. You don't trust something's off. Nah,
Yeah.
ignore that. That's
Yeah.
why so many they see red flags, but they paint them green.
Yeah. Well, and you can't tell anyway. I mean, it took me a long time. I'm still working on this, but it took me a long time to realize that when you're disconnected from yourself, like we are so sensitive. Our bodies and our minds and our spirits and souls are like highly, highly sophisticated, complicated, equipment that can just pick up on the most subtle energies and things that are happening. And we don't know how they work, generally speaking. So, for example, when we start feeling anxious, what do? I got to make that stop.
Mhm.
Actually, anxiety is, part of the equipment that's telling us, hey, Houston, we've got a problem down here. You're disconnected from your heart. And if you're not in your heart, your head's taken over. And when your head takes over, yeah, it's not good for anybody.
Yeah, but we live in a society that's telling you, no, there's nothing wrong. What are you talking about? This is
Right,
normal.
right, right. You remember Pinocchio with they're feeding him candy and drinks and having them play games, and the donkey ears are growing, right? They're becoming more animal and less human.
hmm
Right? Because we are really sophisticated, really interesting beings that are capable of just amazing things, right? I mean, things like ESP that people are like, oh, that's not real. Oh, it's real. I mean, I've seen shows on it where they were using it in the FBI.
hmm
It's like the things that are happening are that our government runs, the programs they run. A friend of mine was in the CIA and he told me about things that were happening, simple things like having running a laser through a tennis ball and having the tennis ball disappear and reappear as two separate tennis balls, identical, but in two separate locations.
mm
Right? I mean, and that's kind of a simple example, but we have no idea about the things that are happening. And it's the human mind mixed with the body and the energy and whatnot that's pulling these things off, right? We're really interesting. And so when we walk around and we're drinking, we're using ways of escaping the feelings of that equipment. We're not able to get the messages. We don't learn how to translate them because it's like being in the cockpit of a big jet airplane without the manual,
hmm
right? Oh, there are all these switches and bells and whistles and things going off, but I don't know how they work, so they just scare me. And so all I want to do is make them stop,
hmm
right? But that information is the very information that we need to find our way into that fulfilling, joyful life that we all want deep down inside.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, so get uncomfortable. Try something new. Get 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 into environments where people you could start with where people look happy.
Yeah.
I share all the time with my clients, one of the quickest ways to raise your vibration is either through um music that you love
Mhm.
or laughter. And,
Yeah.
Kris was saying this she's been sick. She was watching a comedian over the weekend. Laughter is the best, quickest way to raise your vibration and allows your body to start healing. So do things
Absolutely.
that make you laugh. Do
Yeah.
things that bring you joy. Dance in the rain. All this crazy stuff is coming up. But, when we've numbed ourselves for so long, our body, it'll remember. All you got to
Mhm.
do is give it a little taste of it.
Yeah.
Think back to when you were a kid and what brought you joy.
Yeah. And
And
learn.
I know Kris always says people don't know what the word joy even means anymore. And yes, I agree with that. I agree
Yeah.
with that. And joy looks different for everybody.
Yeah. And I would have rolled my eyes. I mean, I know when I was in that, like, when I was in that heavy energy,
Mm-hmm.
and I was using caffeine to get myself to 4 o'clock in the afternoon and then wine to bring myself down. Like when I was in that unconscious place, joy sounded like what kind of idiot believes in joy?
Mm-hmm.
That's how I felt. And we were talking also in prepping for the show about I wish I'd kind of understood about neutral. Like I was so far in the negative because my addictions were so self-destructive, my mind and my body were poisoned. I was taking toxin, washing toxins through my system and not feeling super well. But because it had kind of happened slowly over time, I didn't realize how not well I felt. I didn't realize how heavy my thoughts had become, how depressing, frankly. They had become snarky, sarcastic. I mean, the thoughts in my head were very much like my friends and I hanging out at the bar complaining about everything, right? The world sucks and it's everybody's fault and woe is us. And if we were running the world, it'd all be better because we're so much smarter, which ask any addict. Addicts are brilliant. We have all the answers if only we had the power. But, you know, it's it's like we get ourselves into these places where we believe things that, aren't true. Um, and then we get stuck there. Like, where do you go from there? And I wish that I had understood that neutral, just feeling neutral. I didn't have to go for joy. Joy will find you, right? If you get yourself to a neutral place, if you stop driving that clown car around in the depressing quicksand of it all, and you just get yourself onto solid ground where you're neutral and you're kind of going, okay, let me see what's happening here. I want to see the truth. I want to feel the truth of what's happening here. Joy will find you. It's still there, right? But neutral is a great place to set our sights because it reminds us we're not neutral, we're in negative waters when addiction is running our lives. We're hanging on by our fingernails, even though the addict inside of us will say, I'm doing great. We we're not, and we know it, and which is why I'm saying it to you that clearly, because I'm not telling you anything you don't know.
Yeah. And there's a big difference between neutral and I don't give a shit.
Oh yeah.
There's a big, big difference between that.
Yeah.
Um, Neutral is more of being present. We talked about taking a look at your patterns, being present and seeing, not judging, not beating yourself up, but it's being able to be a present observer and watch what's going on around you.
Mhm.
Watch how you're interacting with people. Pay
Yeah.
attention to how it
Mm.
feels to you.
Mhm.
That's neutral. Neutral is being in a space where you're not triggered one way or the other. You're simply watching, and I call it collecting data.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
collecting data,
Yeah.
where I can, I just could hear some people out there being like, neutral is like, I don't give a shit. No,
No.
that's not neutral.
No. On the energy scale that we talk about, right? 0 to 10,
Mm-hmm.
I don't give a shit is like a zero point 0.5.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I spent a lot of, it's in that shame, that heaviness, that, what's the point? Depression, that's way down on the energy scale. When we're talking about neutral, we're talking about 5, where you're like noticing, but you're not judging.
Mm-mm.
Right? So I might notice that I say to my friend, I'm not drinking right now," which is what I would say to people. I didn't say I'm not drinking anymore. I would say I'm not drinking right now because frankly, it made their reaction less strong and it felt more true to me because I knew that I wasn't drinking right now, and I also knew that I couldn't say I never would again at that
Keeping it
time.
real. That, I
I
mean,
was
that's
keeping it
important.
real. So I'd say, "I'm not drinking right now." And sometimes friends would give me a hard time, right? Because they would suddenly feel uncomfortable. Like they didn't want to drink alone. They didn't want to sit there judging themselves
Mhm.
about the fact that I wasn't drinking, right? It was like, wait, we were drinking buddies. Like this is the thing we did together. And now I can't do that with you. So now I feel uncomfortable and now I need the drink even more. And, it
Yeah.
becomes a whole thing. Neutral is where I'm going, okay, I can see they're uncomfortable and that's okay.
Mhm.
Right? Whereas before I got to neutral, I would be like, oh, can you believe this person? Like I need their support right now and they're not supporting me. I would make them a perpetrator just for feeling the way they felt, just for saying what they said and feeling the way they felt and doing what they did. I would turn them into the bad guy and I would turn myself into a victim. And then
Mhm.
we'd have a problem, right?
Mhm. Yeah, because, if you choose to stop drinking, they continue to drink. Um, One of the things I heard first is they automatically assume that you are now judging them.
Right. Right, because this is how we get stuck. That is such a good point. Because this is how we get stuck. Because we're judging it's like I said about the little prince, and the kid says to the drunk, "Why are you drinking?" He says, "Because I'm ashamed." "Why are you ashamed?" "Because I'm drinking."
Mhm.
Right? So we're judging ourselves and we're judging everybody else when we're in that addict mode and we're trying to escape the judgment.
Mhm.
And when somebody says, "I'm not drinking anymore," I will guarantee you that they're learning to sort through their judgment because until you're willing to give yourself a little grace,
Mhm.
which automatically means you start giving other people grace, until you're willing to give yourself a little grace and just let off on the judgment a little bit, you've got no shot against your addiction.
No. No
So
shot at all.
your friend who says, "I'm not drinking right now," is also saying to you, I'm learning to not judge myself so hard, and I'm not gonna judge you so hard either. Whether they
Mm.
say it in words or not, that's the truth of it.
Right. And I feel like I need to say again, because we've said this in every show, you know, no matter what your addiction is, you will not be able to sit and get real with yourself until you are the one initiating the recovery, the
Mhm,
healing,
mhm,
whatever it is we want to call it,
mhm.
you know. Because when you were talking, automatically I heard, yeah, my husband doesn't want me to drink anymore, so I'm not drinking right now. And
Yeah.
no, that will not work, you know.
No.
And for these families that are out there that have people trapped in addiction, all the love and support you can give them, the tough love that you've tried, everything that you've tried, um, is an expression of love, I'm sure. But the bottom line is, until that person that you love that is trapped in addiction is able to look at themselves in the mirror and say, I'm done and I need help and I'm ready.
Yeah, and I think it's so important what you said, Judy, too, because sometimes we think we're being loving
Hmm.
because our society is a little askew, right? It's a little off balance.
That's being
So,
polite.
yeah, I mean, what the head thinks is loving, the heart would be mortified by,
Hmm.
right? Judgment is not loving. And so many of our interactions I mean, a lot of times people are trying to escape judgment. We're talking about that with the drinking, and then we show up and we're like, I'm going to super judge you now and tell you I find you unacceptable because of your behavior that you started because you hated being judged by me, like right now. Right? And we're like, look at me being a great, fill in the blank wife, daughter, mother, whatever, parent, whatever the thing is. But actually, let me tell you what's really powerful is to be able to first do some work around, you know, do we have an environment where we can have open, honest conversations and people feel safe being who they are without having to wear a mask or hide behind addictive substances? And if the answer is no, think of this, think of the power of this. I realize we have a family environment or we have a family dynamic where alcohol plays a starring role, and I don't think it's helping any of us. What do you guys say we work together to see what else is possible? Can you feel that in your body like that? I don't know if that makes any sense, but when I say those words, I feel like a vibration coming from my heart. Like that's loving. That's real. That's saying we created a dynamic together where we don't know what else to do besides to use these escape tactics. We're not going to beat ourselves up for it because that would be, well, that would be not kind. That would be not respectful. And if we're not kind and respectful, then of course we're going to try to escape that reality. But what if we did learn to be kind and respectful with one another? Like what if we made that commitment to be honest, to be kind and respectful no matter what?
Mhm.
Right? That opens the door for new possibilities because now I can start to get, well, gee, what would that look like? What would we do instead? What new possibilities might become available to us? And now we're not blaming somebody who got caught up in it because most families have a scapegoat. When there's addiction, most of us blame one person. If that person were okay, the rest of us would be fine. It's just the way, it works. So that one person is actually probably believing that they're the problem.
Mhm.
And they're carrying the burden of that and they're trying to escape it. So if we can walk in and say, hey, we think we have a challenge here and we would like to address it together, look at the change of the dynamic. That's loving and it's not judgmental. It's real.
It is very real, and you know, there is a huge collective energetic shift going on. So a lot of people are waking up to the fact that patterns that have been generational have been harmful
Mhm,
versus helpful.
mhm.
These patterns have not been kind and respectful.
No.
And again, Kris said, there's no shame, there's no blame. It just is. And when we can speak openly and say, okay, I can see where this pattern has been going on for generations in our family, and it really hasn't served anybody,
Right.
and having a family that has addiction in it and have lost loved ones to addiction. You have felt like, because this is what society has told you, when you have an addict, this is what you need to do. This is how you need to help them. And this tough love, do this, do that. You've done everything on that spectrum,
Yep.
and none of it's worked.
Yes. Let's be more aggressive, less kind, less respectful. Let's take less responsibility for our role in our family patterns, right? Is what society says. Like, let's blame it on the person who's clearly struggling, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so we like to say, that it doesn't feel kind or respectful to any of us, right? Do I want to tell my kid or my husband or whatever that he's he's a problem or that, she's a problem. I mean, do I want to, is that what's in my heart? That they're a problem in my life? Or do I want to look at it and say, gee, I think we learned a lot of patterns from society and a lot of patterns from our ancestors that aren't serving us very well. And I think together we can turn that around. Like this bullshit stops here. Boom.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes. And the whole tough love and shaming and all that isn't the only, I mean, there's two ends to that spectrum where I don't want my kid to die in the streets. So they're
Right.
living in my house and my house is complete chaos.
Right.
That again gives you the opportunity to, okay, let's sit down and look at these patterns. Let's look at these generational patterns. What was
Hmm.
the energy of family gatherings when we grew up?
Right.
What was the energy of, the day to day? And really, as a parent right now, it's a hard pill to swallow when you find out you have been responsible for the experiences that you've drawn into your life.
Yeah. And it's interesting because energetically we adopt patterns through observation and experience as children. We don't know we're doing it. Those patterns attract certain people because we fit in with them and certain situations, right? And so we kind of grow a life around those patterns because that's what we know. And it's interesting because we are doing it, but we're totally unconscious about it. And so
Exactly.
to me, it's like we become responsible. The opportunity to be responsible is there for us to take. People are afraid to find out that they're responsible, but we're actually not, um, because they think it's blame.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm trying to get at, right? But actually, we were totally unconscious. We didn't know. And the gift being given to us is that we can take responsibility and we can turn the boat around. We
Exactly.
can get in the driver's seat, right? Our whole family can have a different experience. And just this last point is that if we do the work ourselves of finding calm inside of ourselves and freeing ourselves from, needing to protect ourselves and needing to manipulate and all of those kinds of things, that will have an energetic, positive ripple effect on everybody in our lives.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let go of having to blame or shame somebody. Taking responsibility means, fuck yeah, I'm ready to create something different.
Yeah.
I'm ready to create something different. That's
Yeah.
why that neutrality that Kris was talking about is so important, because you
Hmm.
have to sit on that observation deck and really look and take inventory of what's going on. You don't know
Yeah.
what's working and what's not working until you can look at it and see it
Yeah.
for what it truly.
Yeah. And when you see a problem over there, like, oh, so and so's got a problem, really interesting exercise to bring our attention back to ourselves and say, does that problem ever appear in my life?
Yes.
Or how might that look in my life? Because it doesn't have to be exactly the same, right? For us to go, well, yeah, sometimes I get, maybe I am not acting in my best interest. Or maybe sometimes I get aggressive, like unintentionally aggressive, right? Or whatever the thing is that we're noticing in that other person who's got a problem.
Hmm.
Really healthy to bring the attention, bring the focus back in here because we can't help anybody else until our head and our heart are in agreement and having the same discussion right here inside.
Hmm. Yeah. The behaviors that you're seeing, once you, I want to say once you mastered that present neutrality observer position, when you see a behavior, that first question is, oh, is that something that's within me?
Right.
That's the first question. We don't judge from the observation deck. We observe, take in the data, and say, okay, how does this show in my life? And
Yeah.
if it does, how?
Right. Yeah. Jesus said, I don't have a lot of quotes from the Bible, but I have a few, and clearly Jesus was masterful. Um, he said, don't focus on the splinter in somebody else's eye. Take the 2x4 basically out of your own. So, in other words, if you're seeing a problem in somebody else, it's because that problem is originating inside of you. Like the source of that problem is in you, or you wouldn't notice it in the other person. And that's one of those parables. That's why they say reading the Bible and meditating on it and praying and whatever can be really helpful,
Mhm.
because those are the kinds of things that'll twist your, like what? And if
Whoa.
you could, yeah, I mean, it gives you food for thought and things that, the mainstream world doesn't have a ready-made answer for that that's satisfying, which means you actually have to go inside and ask and get new guidance and new information,
Mhm.
right? It's a way of reconnecting with ourselves and our higher selves.
Absolutely. Well put. Um, and we have reached the end of another show. So moving forward in this week, we challenge you to sit in that space of neutrality, be the present observer, collect your data, and go within.
Yes, and do something new. Try something new, right? Try don't no stakes, no winning, losing, success, failure. Like don't mind, bomb yourself. But just say to yourself, what might be fun? What did I enjoy when I was 6 years old? What have I always wanted to try? Right? What's one thing that I could just give myself, just connect with a little spark of new possibility? Give yourself that gift.
Experiment and explore.
Mhm.
And on that note, we say goodbye.
Yeah. And to do.
Adieu. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week for part 5 of our 6 part.
Yay. Bye,
Thanks.
everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, Judy.